Welcome to Module 4. In this lecture, we're going to talk about symbolism. So, I like to start with definitions of things, just so we're all on the same page about what it is we're talking about. Because as I've said, I've seen people fight hard over, they, they actually agreed. What they didn't agree on was the definition of the word or what it was they were debating. They both had different understanding. And once they clarified that, they had been spent hours fighting over what they actually agreed upon, I have just always gotten in the practice of trying to make sure that before, we start a conversation about anything, that we're all talking about the same thing. Okay. So I want to define what I mean by symbolism. So, and by dictionary definition, basically means that an object in the real world is represented by a symbol, and that the symbol has a significance to that object, the event, relationships, other things that you can think of. And the reason that symbolism is such a critical part of design is that we use them to communicate something about the story being told because a lot of reasons. Let's explore that as we move further through. I sometimes start a conversation and I'm like, well, take me way off over here, and I don't want to do that. I want to follow this structure here. Okay, so symbolism is something that has been with us since we first started drawing on the walls of caves. We drew symbols of hands and swirls and bison and other parts of our environment. And so, as we have grown, as humans have grown our culture, our symbolism has become more complex, more profound. It starts to add more things than what our cave ancestors lived with, right? Because they didn't have iPads or iPods or electricity. And so many things that we use are symbolic. And one of my favorite sources of symbolism to quote is actually a movie, because David Fincher's Fight Club had a lot of symbolism in it. And so most people have seen that movie, so they understand. Tyler Durden said a lot of stuff. He was a total hypocrite. He was just the ultimate hypocrite, but he said a lot of really great things, but there was a lot of symbolism in that movie. Now, symbols can be things like an object or a color, a character, the plot, sounds, special effects. They can be materials that are meant to represent or look like other materials. The way you lay out your floor plan can have a flow to it that's symbolic. So whenever we talk about something representing or standing in for something else, it's that something else is usually abstract. And so that's why we covered abstraction. That's why, tying this all together, that's why abstraction is an essential part of design. So you see the two symbols there, right? The stop sign and the go sign, and they're both red. However, either one you put up, people are going to do the same thing, because the symbol to most people is the red hexagon, six side, is stop. The symbol is more powerful than the words, and this proves it right here. And that's why we, really want to make sure that we're including symbolism in our work. And so in this artwork by Edward Munch, the red dress is the symbol. So red is the symbol. So the elements themselves can be symbols. And actually, especially in architecture, colors represent things. Sometimes, the color blue represents water. And as we, when we talked about that module, we talked about how colors can represent other things. That's symbolism. And color can be personal to each person. And so that makes it sometimes harder. Um, one of the things you want to do is ask your clients what colors they like and what colors they don't like, and actually look at colors while you're doing it, because it's a lesson I learned and have shared with you all the hard way. I had no idea that Mark did not like orange. At the beginning, I just should have said to him, "Do you have a preference for any of these colors, and do you prefer I avoid any of these colors?" I just assumed because it was the company's color scheme, he was cool with it. So, in The Black Swan by Darren Aronofsky, the white swan represented a child, and the black swan represented a woman. And that's symbolism, right? The symbolism of color specifically. And of course, color is only one aspect of symbolism. Shapes, and we see this a lot in, like, when you're laying out floor plans. Um, we associate the circle. It's a very feminine shape. It's considered very feminine. So we can associate the circle with the feminine. So if we were designing a residence for a woman and she was very tied to her femininity, we could use circles in the design, whether it's, the structure itself, or it's a pattern on the wall or in the tile, to represent femininity, and share that with her, and she would 99% of the time appreciate that. If you sell your design back to your client in terms of what they are, who they are, and what they like, not only do they almost always approve what you want to do, but they're very happy about it. You want happy clients? Make everything you do about them. Okay, so square, vertical shapes, horizontal shapes, they all have symbolism that is part of our culture. Other cultures have different symbols, or their symbolism can be different, or it can be the same. Some things are universal. The circle is one of those that's universal. But learning about what some of these symbols are and then incorporating them into your work not only makes it more interesting, but it helps make it more personal, and it goes back to the storytelling, which we're actually going to talk about next lecture series. Okay, so here's how important symbols are. And you will see floor plans that have been shaped like the swastika, because before Hitler, it actually meant peace or eternity. So there are floor plans that are laid out based on that, because, why not incorporate peace into your work? And so then along came Hitler, and now anytime anybody sees a swastika, it's like, why did they use that? Is it for the Nazis? And most of the time, no. I mean, for thousands of years, it has meant peace. And then Hitler came along and changed it permanently. So that's the power of symbolism. And then, of course, the Red Cross, people know what that is, the pink ribbon. There are all kinds of things that people have come to associate, or the symbols that people have come to associate with causes or events, or just themselves, that can be used in design. And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but there's an arrow right here. You can see it in color. Oh, I colored it on the thing. Logos. Anytime you see a logo, branding, that's symbolic. In fact, symbols have become so useful that we now use them to represent apps. And apps, right, are software programs that make our lives better. So in works of art, symbolic analogies can also be used to convey messages that help creatively tell us creatively tell our stories. And an analogy is a comparison between two things. that is used for the purpose of explanation or clarification, because essentially, if you can relate an unknown concept to somebody through a known concept, they get it faster and easier than any other thing other than maybe experience. And then analogies allow us to bring a very sophisticated level of creativity to our work. It's in one of the last, in the module 3, I showed you guys some really cool dance movements that were used to create a flow that was then used to design a building. And that's a very sophisticated level of creativity based on dance as the symbol, as the story. Content is what the symbol represents. For example, a bird represents freedom. And here you go, Santiago Calatrava's pavilion. You can begin to understand that he was inspired here by the natural world. And I don't remember if this one's a bird. I think it is. And so the form is symbolic of the bird by showing flight, even though it's not flying. And so the way we execute the symbol matters. So if you show a bird in a random context like we did here, it means nothing. But if the bird is flying, it shows freedom. If the bird has a broken wing, it means the opposite. So there are different things you can do with how you represent your bird to convey that meaning. And yes, you're absolutely right if you're thinking, okay, there you go, it was the bird. And yes, you're absolutely right if you're thinking, well, not everybody's going to know the symbolism. And that's absolutely true. However, it's the structure upon which you build your design. So even if someone never knows or gets that the bird was the design foundation here, it still helped him create a very clear and powerful design that had established structure to it. And so we want to think about, what does the symbol that we're using contribute to the artwork? It, with a strong format, it can significantly improve the design's visual experience. A symbol executed with mastery can add to the whole experience of the building itself, even if the symbol's meaning isn't clear to the audience. Some more symbols. So the peace symbol actually is kind of interesting because it started out to be a protest against nuclear weapons, and it was intended to be what's considered a double entendre. And here you can see how it was meant to, the flags spell ND, and they were put together, nuclear disarmament. And so that's how that symbol came to be, and it's now a very powerful worldwide symbol. Interesting, huh? And then here are some examples that you guys, I've put links in, and you can go through and look at these in more detail about how symbolism was applied to the designs of these houses, which are just quite beautiful. And symbolism, by the way, should be abstract, because here you can see it's not. And I will tell you that ever since they built this basket, every friend of mine who's an architect has mocked it mercilessly, and it's been decades. So, you don't want to be famous for doing what not to do. Okay, so here are the links for this, and I encourage you to check them out and dig a little bit deeper, because symbolism is really something that you got to just start doing. Okay, see you in the next one.